This isn't the splash zone. You're more than welcome to get a little closer because, more than anything, I like to have is a conversation and presentation, ask some questions. So by all means, it's going to be hard to hear from the back. But great to be here, everyone. And today we're going to reveal some habits of successful salespeople, rock stars of sales. And the interesting thing is not what we know today, but actually data that shows, I think for the first time, what actually some of the elements of successful salespeople. So let's start. Oh, this is me. So there are two things, and that, you all know that. There are two things that can make someone more successful, either as a company or as a salesperson. Either like making more calls, more leads, better data, calling the right people, or when you get someone on the phone or meeting them in person, you're saying all the right things, you're asking all the right questions. These are the conversations. Now, there is tons of stuff on the first thing, like how to get like the right leads, and these are things that are relatively easy to measure. Is there anyone here who doesn't know how many calls or how many leads his team is working on? That's a solved problem, right? What we don't know is what's actually happening when people are on the phone, when actually talking with people or meeting with customers. And that's the topic of our conversation today. So let's talk about better conversation. And the way we do that is not by what we think, okay? The one thing we're not interested in here is opinions. Okay, what I've learned at IBM 20 years ago, or at Xerox, or at this sales training, or what I've heard one of my best salespersons I ever met, this is what he used to do. Okay, that's anecdotal data on opinions and things that are much more complex than that. So what we're interested in data, and we're going to discuss some findings from a large scale research on actual conversation with data that is not based on opinion, just subjective hard data. And the methodology, before we dive into those 9 secrets, the methodology needs to be explained. So what we have done, we've analyzed close to 1 million sales calls. Okay, if you think about it, the average sales call is about, that we in our database is about 45 minutes. That's almost, how many years would it take to listen to all these things? Okay, nobody has time for that. So what we try to understand is not only listen to these calls, but what separates the stars from everybody else. Okay? What are the things that are unique? Are they saying different things? Are there words that they're using? Are there any patterns? Anything that can be learned on a large scale, they'll like prove or disprove things that we think that makes them successful. Okay, so 1 million is a lot of calls, and obviously you can't listen to all of those. You can listen to samples. Okay, you want to know something on a large scale, you need to do it automatically. Okay, and the way that we did it, we took recordings of calls. All calls were transcribed and then processed in lots of different ways to separate the speakers, and then analyzed to extract some 400 attributes per call, like questions asked, types of questions, how much talk time, how much the patients, which topics were discussed at which point of the call. If you think about the combinations are endless, and then all of those behaviors that were observed on every call were contrasted with the outcome of the call. Okay, so if you're having a call, and if it's a successful call, okay, we have defined successful call that the probability of the opportunity went up, or the lead progressed, there was a follow-up. Okay, and if there was no follow-up or it stalls, it means it wasn't like a great call. Okay, very, very simple. So good call, probability goes up. After the call, not so good call, everything else. And then you start comparing what characterized the top, and the top being the top 5%. The top 5% performers is sales to everybody else. Okay, so here's how you could try to get close to the stars. So we're going to start from bottom to the top. Okay, number 9. I like the sound of that, right? Number 9, you know, like number 9. It's like one of the Beatles psychedelia era songs, number 9. Okay, but number 9 behavior is controlling the agenda. Okay, controlling the agenda of the call. It's something that, you know, wouldn't shock anyone here, but what is shocking actually that the data shows that this is very true. This is one of the key areas that separates the top sellers from everybody else. So let's look at some of the things. What does it mean controlling the agenda? So one of the things that was identified as the key difference is what percentage of the time is allocated to discussing next steps for the call. Okay, the star reps about 8%. Okay, and the average rep 5%. Okay, this may not sound like much. Okay, but if you think about it, it's about almost like twice as much. Okay, so this is something that we train people. Okay, we coach them how to do it, but still the data shows that it's not happening. And remember, like the star are the top 5%, which means that 95% of the teams aren't doing it right. Here's another, a little more complicated example. Okay, so what we're seeing here is when is pricing discussed on the call? What's the timing like? Early or late in the call? Okay, so what we're seeing, the star reps is the blue line, and the average reps, I mean good, not bad, okay reps, are the orange lines. And you can see clearly that the star reps discuss it a little bit early on, early in the call, but mostly towards the end of the call, probably after the value has been established, okay, versus the mediocre reps, the average guys and girls, do it early in the call, okay? Very, very clear difference. Again, it's something that we know, but you see it's actually happening, okay? So if you're not really looking at it, this is what's actually happening in reality. Questions? Please.
What about pricing versus value? Are those all lumped together?
No, so this is yes, this is just pricing. Okay, it's most of the calls, and it's hard on a million calls. There are different types of calls. Okay, but the mostly like early stage calls, discovery, demo, initial presentation. So these are like up funnel discussions, and the only things we looked in this case, when is pricing being discussed? It's very possible. So you can see it it's on a 60-minute scale. Not all calls are 60 minutes, but they're stretched. They're normalized on a single scale. So it's quite possible that value was discussed early in a call by the star reps. Okay? Good question. More, please. It's sticking to what you want to get out of this call. Okay? Just this is what needs to happen, and again, this is more of an interpretation. Being cautious, what we're seeing is actually data. Okay, it doesn't mean to explain why things are happening or underneath, right? But that you do not, what happens a lot of time, that people like would spend like the 45 minutes and not do a time check, and then they end the calls and they forget to, they don't have time for the next steps, and I'll call you next week. Okay, that's controlling the agenda and discussing and controlling what you want to discuss and when. Okay, so purely just agenda management. You have an agenda, you agree upon it, and you execute the call, and you watch the time. Just very, very simple. Okay, number 8. it's a little bit related to the previous topic, but it's controlling the rhythm. Okay, and this is like a quote that I really like, okay, from the man and the legend. So part of what means to have a powerful persona, and the top reps often are powerful personas, is you can draw others to your own rhythm versus being dragged. So one interesting thing that we've noticed, it's very difficult to observe, but it's very clear from the data, is we looked at talking speed, okay? Simply words per minute, okay? You're seeing here, okay? So most people, the average talking speed is 150 words per minute, okay, in the US. Here's a nice anecdote. Actually, the best comprehension, okay, occurs at 200 words per minute. Okay, so it's actually easier to understand when people talk a little fast. Okay, because when you speak slowly, like I'm doing right now, your mind meanders. Okay, so here's a tip. You can, when you listen, just as a salesperson, talk a little faster, and when you listen to call, accelerate them a little bit. You'll be able to absorb more quickly. Okay, but this is like the top rep, and you can see the prospects pace and the sales reps. You can see that the seller starts high and the prospect immediately pulls towards that pace. They follow. Okay, that's the orange line. You see that initial takeoff at the beginning of the call. Average reps, they follow. Okay, so it just goes. There's no magnetic personality. If you look at the sentiment level, so one of the things that we looked at was sentiment analysis, so how much positive expression and good vibes occur at different points of the call, and you can see that the stars, even though they pull the customer, and maybe because the overall sentiment tends to be more positive. It goes in the right direction throughout the call. Okay, so point number 8, control the rhythm. The star reps, they control the rhythm. There is a groove, there is a beat, okay, and they control and they pull. They don't follow. Questions? Yes, please. Yeah, if this data shows that what we were taught is incorrect, all right, just take it like as is. But it shows that the top stars, you look at the top 5%, they control the agenda and the rhythm. And we'll talk about some of the other attributes, okay? But this is just one of quite a bit. Number 7, talk business, okay? And someone asked here about pricing versus value. So when we analyze the content of the conversations and how much time people are talking about business issues, okay, clear difference, huge difference. 50% more time is dedicated to discussing business issues. Okay, business issues include things like return on investment, prospects, business challenges, agenda and timeline for the initiatives, decision-making ecosystems, value topics versus features, okay? So clear difference. It's something that we've been taught on day 1 in sales, but what's happening in reality is that most people talk too much about the drill versus the hole in the wall. Clear difference. Number 6, coffee shop conversation. So what's coffee shop conversation? So first and foremost, it's a conversation, all right, and not a monologue. So let's look at some of the attributes of what a good conversation looks like. And I don't even know what's good, but what good is what the top performers are doing. So let's start with something that is not good, or not bad, but average. You can see this is like the talk tracks, okay, of the salesperson versus the prospect. Okay, it's a very simple example. Something could be multiple people on calls and it gets more complicated. But what's clearly visible here? He's not listening, or it could be listening some more, right? Yeah, you can see that there are big chunks. How do we call these chunks? Monologues, okay? And that's a pattern of most salespeople, most. Here's what a good conversation looks like. Okay, and a good means the ones that converts, that has a next step, that has a follow-up where the probability goes up. Okay, so it's more like ping pong. It's not about ball possession. It's ping pong. That's a lot of back and forth. It's very interactive. It's not just how much time you spend, but there's a lot of confirmations, pauses, and back and forth. Okay, so it's a very engaged customer. Do you know what happens to the prospect when you go over like 2 minutes without a pause? Yeah, yes, you do, right? They're checking their emails. They're zoning out. Even if you speak at 200 words per minute. Any questions, or do you want to share? Did anyone have that kind of experience, like with monologues? Right, absolutely. That's a very good point. Thank you. One of the things that we don't have it in this presentation, but it's interrupting. Okay, the prospect is about to say something and not waiting to hear the complete sentence, or overriding, or just jumping into. One of the things that we've measured is what we call the patience factor, for lack of a better name, but usually the best practice is to wait or let someone finish, count to 3, because they're about to say something else, or they could be, to you're absolutely sure that they're done, and then to wait. The average person, I think my patience factor is 0.67 second. It's within the benign area. But the top sellers would have even more. They wait, they let them finish, and then they yeah. But overriding and interrupting is a big problem. This is again the data between the switching. Remember that ping pong? Okay, so if this were a ping pong game, okay, would manage how many switches per minute are occurring on a call. Okay, so speaker 1 moves to speaker 2, back and forth. And without getting into the actual numbers, but you can see they're very highly correlated. Okay, so more switches, short sentences, pause, ask, especially when you're in someone over the phone. It's very easy to lose the attention of someone. Okay, you always need to check back, confirm, and talk. Here's another interesting factor that is hard to detect unless you look at a lot of data. Okay, but I'm sure we've all experienced the Inquisition. Right? Did you ever get on a sales call with someone like going through like 20 checkboxes? Like, did you do this? Did you do that? What's your priority? What's your initiative? You start and says, wait, this call is about me, isn't it? Right? So very clear difference between the star performers, the top 5%, and everybody else. You can see that do ask questions, and questions are good, but they're kind of like spread evenly throughout the conversation. They feel more natural and flowing, versus the average reps, the orange chart, see they're much more front-loaded. Okay, so lots of questions at the beginning of the call, and not just how's it going. Okay, they tend to go throughout the calls. So again, this is like very, very, it's a poor buyer experience to be interrogated in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the call, right? That's, even though I know that you're dying to know what my pain, what my top issues and all of that, but it's just a terrible buying experience. And the data shows that it doesn't work. I'm pausing. Questions? One at a time, please. Okay, number 5. Hollywood style demos. Okay, now what on earth is Hollywood style? Okay. What we're looking here is at the number of questions, and this applies obviously to the software that are as either demos or presentation. Doesn't apply to every company or every sales process. Okay, but we've measured how many questions are asked by the prospect. Okay, these are prospect questions during that presentation. Okay, and there's a very interesting factor. The top performers are getting 30% more questions. Why do they get more questions? Any ideas? So they get the better prospects? No, that's a result. The prospect, if they ask more questions, they're obviously more engaged. But why? What did they do that other people don't? Please. They what? No, what we're seeing is the outcome. Okay, they are getting more questions. I'm asking what is the reason that prospects are asking these people more questions? Yes, please, in the back. Yes, that's a very good point. What else? Please, Mark. Exactly. They prompt. Okay, they facilitate. They want to get those questions. Okay, they're not in love with their own story or try to bombard. They facilitate those questions. They make it easy to ask. There are several ways to do that. Okay, this is not sales training, but there are 2. First, just ask. What do you think? Okay, I'll make we promised 9. I'll give you like a 10th one for as a bonus. Okay, the question that does not facilitate a lot of question is, does that make sense? Okay, that does not trigger a lot of response. People say, yeah, right? That's not what you want, okay? But the key is actually showing less, okay? And why do we call it Hollywood style? How do you sell like $1 billion movie? It's not by showing the movie, it's by showing a trailer, a 60-second that just tells you just a little bit, and you're dying to know what's happening, right? So you're showing just a little bit, err on the left side. And just enough, okay? Just show part, so they'll want to ask more. Okay? If you tell everything, then you don't get questions. Okay? So Chris Arl over here is a big fan of Scotch whiskey. He's like diluting, like watering a whiskey down. If you show like too much, just a drop of water is the perfect size. So just show a little bit to keep them asking for more. Number 4. This is like an old-time trick, and you see like on the shopping channel and everywhere that we've been taught. The interesting thing here, shocking news, it works. Okay, risk reversal. What's risk reversal language? Yeah, but what do you say? Like, how do you like reverse a risk? Please. You could try. Free trial. Yeah, free trial is a possibility. Yeah, that reduces the risk. Okay. So simple things like you can cancel anytime. Okay, it works. Just use it. I mean, that's what the top sellers are doing much more frequently than everybody else. Okay, if you can think about the sales process, I can reduce the risk and use that language. Remember, so we started like with the number 9, 8, and 7 and all of these, like business issues, keep them interested, leave the pricing towards the end, and then you close it with risk reversal. You can cancel anytime. Just make it a no-brainer, whatever it is. You can try it, you can cancel, opt out. Number 3, therapist-grade listening skills. How do you measure listening skills? And what the hell is therapist grade? You know, we're not in therapy, we're in sales. So a very simple measure, if you remember that ping pong that we've seen like in the previous points, just you could measure just a total. It's a very simple measure and it's very, very effective, right? Total talk percentage of seller versus prospect. How much airtime do you capture and how much time do you leave to the prospect? Okay, it's a zero-sum game. Okay, there was like 60 minutes and then you can count who speaks more. Again, here too, very, very clear difference between the bottom reps, 72%. Sometimes we'll see, especially with new hires could get as high as 85% very, very frequently. Okay, it's not unheard of. It's a very, especially the new hires that they're insecure, they tend to talk a lot more than some of the most veterans that are relaxed, laid back, pour some scotch and then have a conversation. But very, very clear differences between the behavior. This is very easy to fix, right? The good news, it's very, very important, it's very, very clear, and it's very prevalent. But not a lot of difference between the average and the bottom reps. This is very interesting, okay? But big difference with the top 5%. Any questions on these points or anything you want to add from your experience? Does No, not yet. Remember, we spoke about monologues? There are good monologues. Okay, monologues are good when they're happening by the prospect. Okay, not the salesperson. Salesperson monologues are evil, right? They're boring but prospect monologues are pure gold. What a lot of the salespeople would often do, they would interrupt. They've heard something that either sounds like a perfect fit, oh yeah, we absolutely, boy, do I have something for you, right? Or they're hearing an objection, okay, and then they'll jump right in, okay, and they interrupt, okay? But here we've measured the success by every call, the longest monologue of the customer in seconds. So 240 would be like 6 minutes, okay? And the more here is better, okay? Very, very clearly, the data shows it. How do you get a prospect to talk more without interruption? Yeah, tell me more. That's very good. But they already interrupted him. That's a second monologue. Absolutely. The best thing is just keep your mouth shut. Okay, just don't say anything. Okay? Tell me more is legit because if someone talks, but often if you just say nothing and you wait, they'll keep talking. Okay? And remember, more is better. Even if you have a different agenda, even if you want to go in a different direction, if you already think that you know what they're thinking and what they want to say, just wait. Silence is gold. It's also one of the best objection handling technique. This is I call it the socially awkward silence. Okay? The prospect could say something terrible like, yeah, I don't think I could afford this. Like, you're too expensive. Okay? The best thing to do is just absolutely nothing. Just don't say anything. Oftentimes they'll say, well, maybe if we could work this out, I could do something. Just wait. Silence is great. Okay, number 2. differentiate early. Okay? One of the things that we looked at was competitive sales and competition handling. Okay? So what we're seeing here, just to explain a little bit the technique, is what happens, how many times the competitor was mentioned on the call. Okay, this is for early stage deals, and what's the success rate? And we compare it with late stage call. These are like negotiation calls or contract, okay, closing, versus like initial discovery, presentation, introduction. And you can see that on the early stage, the orange line, the more you discuss the competition, the better the results are. So you position it early. If things come in late, it's almost the opposite. Okay, just one or two mentions, not a big deal, but competitor mentioned a lot of time late is a bad signal. Okay, so the star reps, they position themselves early on compared to like anyone else out there. Okay, this is pretty similar. Any questions on the competitive positioning? So differentiating, positioning early is good. Okay, don't be afraid. I mean, it's a good thing. People think, oh, I hope they're never going to look at the competitors. Just do it early, be proactive, do it early on if you establish the rules. Please, yes. It could be like in either way. What the data shows that discussing the topic, putting it on the table, okay, for better, they could say 12 times that they hate your competitors, okay, that's still good, okay, or they can say that they love it and you're differentiated. It depends, but ignoring it is not good, okay, leaving it later on. You want to address it like proactively early on. That's the conclusion. Thank you. Okay, number one, and that's surprising and not surprising. What's not surprising is that it works, but the extent. This is like one of the most powerful things that you can see. One of the biggest differences, and actually not about words being said, but who is participating. Okay, then number one, and we put it number one because the difference was unbelievable. It's almost 2.5 times. Selling in teams. Okay. So one of the simple factors, it's a very, very simple data. How many people were on the call? Okay, and in calls where we had like multiple people from the company, almost more than twice as likely to move forward, okay, when calls where it was like a solo call. Okay, so the star reps, they rally, they bring more people to the call. They pull resources from the company, from the teams, from whoever it is, and we don't even know why, okay? But the thing that we know that it does work. Please, do you want to? Yeah, so this is like people don't win deals alone, right? That's the fact. Yes, please. It's neither. It's a very good point, and I made it like early on. This is like correlation and not causation. Okay, for those like, if I wear like jeans and a black turtleneck, it doesn't mean that it doesn't make me Steve Jobs. All right, so that's the difference. The fact that people have, it doesn't mean necessarily that because they have multiple people on the call. It could be, right? But we don't have a presumption to say that because they bring multiple people, okay? But this is a fact, and because of the large volume of calls, I mean, it's very, very clear. This is statistically beyond insignificance. You know that if there aren't, what you could say, if there aren't If there's only one person on the call, then the probability of its closing is much less. Okay, that is true. Okay, yes, please. The question was like, what's the sweet spot? What's the golden number? We don't know, but that's a very good question. Maybe for next year's presentation, we'll figure it out. But it doesn't mean if we put like 10 people, you're 10 times more likely to close. One more questions. Yes, please. Yes, we looked at a lot of things. What we brought here are 9 of the top clear differences. Okay, I mean there are lots of things like patience and when you discuss like specific features or types of question being asked, open and close ended. But these are the top 9 that are worth focusing on. If you focus on these points, you'll make a big difference to your sales team. I'm getting this signal, whatever it means. But thank you all very much. I hope that was useful. If you didn't take notes, you can download all of these in a little more elaborate from gong.io/secrets. There's an ebook. All of these 9 points are there. And if you have any questions, just connect with me, Amit at gong.io. It's very, very simple. Thank you all very much and have a wonderful day.